The home run derby was last night, and it was not a home run that was the biggest bomb of the night. Brandon Aiyuk has apparently requested a trade, and he may not be the only star receiver on the move before the start of this season. And the All Star game is upon us, which means I have to ask you all a question. If you could make an All Star team of your favorite players, who would it be? Well, we're going to tell you ours. That and more coming up on Sports Talk with Dad right now. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Sports Talk with Dad. As always, my name is Kyle, and I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man so old he remembers what it's like to hear people sing drunk well. My dad, Tim.
I remember those days.
Yeah, so one thing we haven't done since we're on the topic ever in our show is start the show with the National Anthem.
We're going to do Whitney Houston?
No, we're going to do last night's performance.
That was a wrong one to pick. She had a bad night, to quote somebody else recently who said they had a bad night.
Wow.
She came out today and said she was drunk.
Yeah, she posted on X and on Instagram that she's going to rehab and she thinks it's going to be fun.
She's disappearing for a few weeks.
I mean, she had me until she said, I think this is going to be fun.
Rehab's not fun ever.
Listen, as somebody who had to stop drinking, I wish nothing but the best for her if this is true.
Right.
I wish that on nobody. I really don't wish that on anybody to have any type of substance abuse problem, especially alcohol, because that's a tricky one because it's everywhere. It's so socially accepted, and she's a musician, and it's everywhere she goes. So I don't wish that on anybody. So I hope she gets the help she needs. You grew up in a time where I don't think anyone was ever sober that sang songs. You're talking Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. I don't think any of them were sober from the moment they woke up.
They were, I think, what you would call maintenance drunk. I mean, Frank Sinatra, from what reports are, drank a fifth of Jack Daniels.
That's what I'm saying. And went out and performed just fine. And plus, if she really has had a drinking problem for this long, how is she performing? She's on tour right now. Is this what she sounds like every night?
No, because today they have auto-tune.
I think this is more of, she just got busted for really relying on auto-tune. Is this the worst national anthem ever?
No, because I can remember Carl Lewis and Roseanne Barr.
Yeah, but they're not singers. Roseanne did it bad on purpose.
Yes.
Carl Lewis, God bless him. He realized he was doing bad. He played it off. He's like, I got to go now. I mean, those are just bad choices.
Yes.
This is a 4-time Grammy nominated country singer.
I hope she's a good songwriter.
I don't even know really still who she is.
I don't either.
I mean, the best national anthem of all time is Whitney Houston's version of the national anthem.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not even close.
Never will be close, especially not only was it great, but it was right after 9/11.
Right. I think this is the worst because this is a professional singer.
Yeah.
A professional singer. It's real bad.
She had a really bad night. I was trying to think of words to use to describe that other than there was nowhere to go but up for the home run derby.
Talk about a boring home run derby.
It was. The highlight of the entire night for me was the very last at bat when Bobby Witt was into his extra innings or extra time.
Yeah.
And he had to hit the last one, had to go out to tie Hernandez. for the win, and he hit it to the base of the wall.
Listen, here's the thing. I knew we were going to talk about this today, and so I turned it on. I found better things to watch.
They've got to go back. I mean, it used to be 10 outs, and then you're done.
And we had a lot of comments about that last week on our last video on both the shorts and the actual videos about, I wish they'd just go back to 10 outs. And I've thought about it more and more, and I agree. It was fun to watch people actually get to wind up and crush these things. What are the greatest home run derbies of all time? Mark McGwire in Boston, just going to town. Sammy Sosa in Milwaukee, taking it off the top of the scoreboard.
Ken Griffey Jr. in Baltimore, hitting the factory behind Camden Yards.
Who's the Ranger?
Josh Hamilton.
Josh Hamilton in New York, hitting the back wall.
Those are bombs.
Those are the memories that people talk about always.
Look,
and just go back to that. Like, it's more exciting. And plus, here's the thing with baseball. Baseball's best in person, right?
Always.
So give the fans a show. Make that ticket worth every dollar that they paid, and let people just go to town.
The problem is baseball is now trying to time everything. They have to be done by 10 o'clock, so we're going to time it. Baseball's not like that. Sometimes you just have to let the event play out.
Right. If it goes longer, it goes longer. It's baseball over the home run derby's been trash for a while. They keep updating the rules. Like, just let people go hit home runs.
Yeah.
Who cares about all this?
You don't need to put them in brackets. Pick your best 8 guys. They go until they get 10 outs, and then we move into the next round.
Right. And the top home run hitters move on. It was a perfect competition. And they've just tinkered with it and ruined it, and I hate it now. Like I said, I turned it off. You showed me the highlights of the last home run, and that was exciting. But I'm like, man, I got better things to do.
I watched it, and the first round when they let all 8 hit, I liked it. It was 40 pitches, whatever. Could have done 10 outs, much easier. Then it gets convoluted because then you put it into brackets.
Right?
Why? Just let the 4 guys who are left hit.
Yep. You'd think that would make the most sense.
You go 8 to 4 to 2.
But baseball ruins itself all the time. You know what this does prove to me, though, watching the first part of it?
What?
The 12th inning idea of the Carney plan to save baseball is still the best thing baseball could do.
They could. And our viewers have had big problems with us saying that. But I will come back to them and go, you can't 15, 16, 17 inning games. You're losing too many people at that point.
You are.
Get to the 12th inning, have a home run derby, and baseball is very exciting at that point.
For those of you that haven't heard this part of the Carney plan or haven't heard it before, shame on you. We're ready to save baseball. But the 12th inning part is the big one where you end the game in the 12th inning. Each team picks a designated person to hit home runs and a designated person to pitch those balls to them from their own team. They go 6 balls each, 12 balls, 12th inning. Get it? It works perfectly. And if it's tied at the end of 6 balls each, then you go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, back
Next
and
home
forth.
run.
The home team hits last, as you have in the innings in baseball now. You hit home runs until it's over. It's a shootout, and it's done. It's the perfect solution.
I love the idea. It's certainly worth trying.
And one, you get a specialist out of it, too, because you're going to have a guy, and there would be nothing more exciting than a Game 7 of the World Series decided by a home run derby.
It would be talked about forever.
Yeah. I'm glad you're finally on my side with this. I do have a question for you.
I'm not sure I'm on your side, but for the sake of argument in this, I'm just going to go with it.
I'd take it. You beat them down until they agree with you. That's all that matters.
Anybody who's a parent.
Where are your specialty glasses that you're supposed to be wearing right now?
Why are we talking about this? We were talking about the home run derby.
I just realized you didn't have them on.
I do not. Nor am I going to.
He just had eye surgery yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be wearing specialty glasses. And I noticed because your eye's looking a little red right now.
Yeah.
You need to put on your glasses.
No.
You need to put them on.
I am not putting these on.
Put them on.
Can't believe I'm doing this. I can't do the whole show like this.
Yes,
I just
you
can't.
can.
I can't do the show like this.
Yes, you can.
You called me Kurt Rambis yesterday.
You look like Kurt Rambis. A worse looking version of Kurt Rambis.
No, somebody else remarked today. He said, "Well, maybe Napoleon Dynamite." I'm like, "No, no, these have to go."
Well, Napoleon Dynamite,
He
did
had
he wear
I
glasses?
thought he had wire rim glasses.
I don't remember.
I don't
He
know.
did. He
It
did
was
have wire rim
It was a
glasses.
funny line. I
I tell you what, you take your high school picture,
no.
Napoleon Dynamite, and that's the same person.
Yeah, those pictures have all been destroyed.
He's not kidding, by the way.
Whew.
I'd love to put one up here to show you.
That was the era of
They
leisure
don't
suits.
exist.
No, they don't.
They're gone. I asked my grandmother for photos of him. Not there.
No.
Can't find them. I have your, I did see your yearbook picture somewhere. I think Pam has your yearbook picture.
Yeah, until I can get my hands on it and burn it. But
Oh, well. So,
Oh, well.
other news going on right now
Yeah,
in
by
the
the way,
world.
congratulations. We will end it with this, but congratulations. Oh, I'm going to butcher his name. Teoscar Hernandez, who did win the home run derby last night.
Yippee.
But and
Again, bring back the 10 outs.
more
Make 'em
thing.
excited.
So they're having special uniforms for tonight's game. Last night they had them wear their own jerseys.
I'm really confused
like
by
that.
that too.
The hats were ugly.
I don't agree with that at all. I thought the hats were cool. I like specialty hats. I love specialty
Okay,
hats.
I don't
And
mind.
most people that buy hats like specialty hats. So this isn't about you.
Make them good then.
They were good.
They look like bad softball hats.
I didn't think so. I thought they looked
Well,
cool.
you're
For a
wrong.
novelty hat for a home run derby, I thought they were great. You know who else is going to like it? People who actually wear hats, which you don't.
No, I don't.
So I don't know why you have such a problem all the time
Because
with
I
hats
wo-
because you don't even wear hats.
I wore hats for 20 years.
Okay. Do you wear hats now?
No,
Then why do you care?
because I still like hats. I still like cool looking
Those
hats.
didn't look bad. I don't mind specialty hats for the All Star game. But yeah, the fact that they're wearing, because that was always how it used to be. You wore the National League, American League jerseys
Right.
for the home run derby because that's actually National versus American League. But yet, for the All Star game, you wore your own jerseys.
Which
Now they've reversed it.
cool. Yeah, which I don't understand. Wear their own jerseys.
That was also, by the way, something that was really exciting about the home run derby is it was National versus American
Right.
League. You always wanted to see your league win. It didn't matter if it was somebody from your team,
No, but your league.
but your league. That made it more exciting. I don't know why baseball's backwards, man.
Baseball is trying to be too cute by half, and they fail almost every time.
Well, let's go on to a sport that seems to have it right. That is the NFL. And the big news from the NFL right now, a couple things. So I'm going to start with this one here. Jordan Love has yet to sign his contract. Their GM, Brian Gutekunst, has come out and said they want to get it signed by training camp yesterday. Well, training camp is in 6 days.
Correct. Which means, in my mind, they must be very close.
I think it's a done deal. And I think he's about to become the first $60 million quarterback in the NFL.
Well, they've got to do that because people forget 2 years ago, Gutekunst was very famous for not signing him to the fifth-year option and saying it's an awful lot of money to pay somebody who's never been on the field.
Which is fine.
It was fine at the time. He's now been on the field. I still will say he's only had a good half of one season.
He was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL for the entire season, and that includes those 4 games where he wasn't playing very well. If you look at his entire season, which you have to judge, that's what bothers me. People keep talking about, well, for 4 games, he was the worst quarterback in the league. But include those 4 games and take the rest of his stats, and he was a top 5 quarterback. Name another quarterback in the league that has a terrible 4 games and is still in the top 5 in the league.
Not arguing that. I think they cut him loose and he got out of his own head.
Yeah.
And he flipped the switch. I think he's going to be a great quarterback.
He's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. He already
going-
is a Hall of Fame
I
quarterback.
will make that decision in 3 years. But I think he proved himself very well. His team really loves him and respects him. They've rallied around him.
Speaking of Hall of Fame, by the way, I have found a whole group of people on the internet that agree with me that Kurt Warner being a first ballot Hall of Famer is a joke and taints the Hall of Fame
Why would you
as
bring
a whole.
Okay, we don't talk about that anymore because someday I want
Because
Kurt
I
Warner
got
on the
into
show.
conversations. Yeah, he can come on the show. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been in the Hall of Fame. I've said it before. If he would have gone in 10 years, 15, 20 years after his career, I wouldn't have a problem with it. The problem I have is that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is disrespectful to all the other first ballot Hall of Famers. And the only reason he was a first ballot Hall of Famer is because he started working at the NFL Network that same year.
It's a great story.
It's not, though. If you look at it, because have you done a deep dive into that whole grocery store story?
It's a great story. It was a great
Yeah.
movie. You know,
That is
Hollywood.
that is such an embellished part. He was just waiting for the season to start and had to do something to make some extra cash. He didn't leave football to go and bag groceries. He simply bagged groceries while he was waiting for the season to start in the Arena Football League. On to a real first ballot Hall of Famer in Jordan Love. Do you see any way that this doesn't get done? And because if it doesn't get done, Jordan Love is not coming to training camp.
He will be in training camp, number one. And number two, I think it's going to be done. I think it's going to be announced sometime in the next 6 days, obviously. I think the whole thing that's probably holding it up is the amount of money up front. Goff got 170. Lawrence got 142. He's going to be someplace in the middle.
I don't even think it's necessarily the money. I think it's the language of the contract. Whenever you see it get held up like this, especially since you have your benchmark. Trevor Lawrence signed. That is your benchmark right there. They basically have had the same starts to their career, except Jordan Love is in a shorter period of time. You know what you have to pay him. I'm assuming there's something in that language of the contract that is holding this whole thing.
Well, and I think you're right. I think Love's people want him to be a $60 million man.
Well, and I think what they really want is, okay, this is going to be a 5-6 year contract, right? I'm assuming it's going to be a 5-year contract.
5.
They want to get roster bonuses and roster guarantees for those last 2 years. Normally, that's not the case in these types of contracts. Like, you can be cut and they don't have to pay you out anymore. I'm assuming that's what's holding this up.
And the Packers are brilliant at playing, look, yeah, we can sign you to this big deal, but then you're not going to have the players around you to get to the Super Bowl.
Sure they will. All these things get renegotiated anyway.
Of course they will, number one. And number two, the contract or the money in football keeps going up. That salary cap is going to go way up in the next 3 years.
What do you do if Jordan Love sits out?
He's not going to sit out.
Is this the risk the Packers are willing to take, though?
No, I think
because
he's
here's
fine.
Gutekunst likes to play hardball with players. He always has. And he's been really good about getting players to consistently take pay cuts to the point, I think, where it's going to start costing them free agents.
Oh, look.
Because you sign, and then all of a sudden he asks for these cuts every single year.
Yes.
You look at Preston Smith's contract, he probably got paid $10 to $20 million less than he was signed for.
Look at Aaron Jones.
Right.
And he's got all these wide receivers. They can't all be paid.
No, they can't. But right now you have to focus on your quarterback.
He's going to get
What are the odds of this not being signed before training camp?
less than 10%.
What are the odds if this doesn't get done before training camp? Jordan Love is not practicing.
Less
at
than
training
10%.
camp.
He's still under contract.
He is, but so are all these other guys that do this, and they show up, but they're magically on a bike on the side waiting for the deal to be
Jordan
signed.
Love has too big of goals. He knows he still has a lot to prove. He wants to prove it.
This does, but you have a general manager that has a tendency of holding things like injuries against players.
And Jordan Love hasn't been injured.
No, but if you're in training camp and you get hurt before the contract is signed, I just don't put it past
This is
Brian Gutekunst for holding this against him.
I do for one reason. Aaron Rodgers was not his guy. Jordan Love is his guy.
Yeah,
he wants to see him succeed.
Took his guy, and instead of signing him to his fifth-year option, made him renegotiate a contract that gets him paid $12 million next year.
We talked about this on the show. He looks like a fool this year, Gutekunst, that is, because if he would have signed him to the fifth-year option, he's playing this year for $25 million.
He does this all the time. This is a game Ted Thompson didn't play. This is a game Ron Wolf didn't play. He signed his star players. Ron Wolf signed Reggie White and made sure Reggie White was always taken care of. He signed Brett Favre and made sure Brett Favre was always taken care of. Ted Thompson signed Aaron Rodgers and made sure he was always taken care of. He did the same thing with Clay Matthews. He did the same thing with Jordy Nelson. He did the same thing with all of his guys. Gutekunst doesn't do that, and I don't understand why.
He doesn't have guys.
But he needs to.
But he's more cold-hearted. You're never going to see Gutekunst sign a third contract that's going to take somebody over 30 years of age.
And that's where I think with a new president coming into play here, Gutekunst may be in trouble because the president's going to look at him, especially as Jordan Love gets better and better and better. These conversations are going to continue to happen, and the president could easily look at him and say, we're done with this, especially if LaFleur starts to all of a sudden take off.
Okay, well, here's my question. Ed Policy is going to be the new head of the Packers.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's got policies in place to take care of Gutekunst.
He's been in the league forever. His father was a GM over in San Francisco during their glory years.
And you just
I left it there. Here's my question right now.
Yeah.
The Packers are siloed. Russ Ball is part of that silo. He's got the money part of it.
Yes.
Gutekunst has got the player little part of it.
Yes.
And then LaFleur's got the coaching. They all report independently up to Mark Murphy. What is Policy going to do? Because that Murphy thinks he could do that because he was a player at one time.
Yeah.
Policy's been a front office guy, corporate. He's been general counsel for the Packers for several years. Different structure.
The only way to fix it is to fire LaFleur.
Well, that's not happening.
I know, but think about it, right? Because if you fire the GM and bring in a new GM and tell the coach who is already there, hey, you report to this guy now, that's not going to go over well.
Or you fire Gutekunst.
That's what I'm talking about, though. If you fire Gutekunst, the GM, and bring in a new GM and tell the coach that you now report to this guy who didn't hire you.
LaFleur is not going to be happy about reporting to anybody.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no way to fix it unless a GM hires the coach, and LaFleur's become a really good coach.
He's in the top 5, 6, 7 coaches in the entire league. He's not going anywhere.
There's no fixing this. You're just going to have to ride it out and see what happens unless you fire Gutekunst and give LaFleur the power as both GM and coach.
Well, and don't do that because we've done that in Green Bay, and it does not end well.
No, it does not. Unless it was Mike Holmgren, which I still want to figure out why that didn't happen.
There was other issues there, but there's another guy that is absolutely going to hold out and has demanded a trade, and that's Brandon Aiyuk.
He will be sitting out for training.
He has come out and said he wants a trade. Because they just can't come together on an extension.
Well, Brandon Aiyuk wants to be paid like Justin Jefferson.
He's right now.
And
Aiyuk
San Francisco is saying you're not Justin Jefferson.
Aiyuk is making $14.1 million a year. He wants
30.
He wants 30. That's a big bump.
Nobody's going to sign him to that. Nobody.
Somebody will pay him 25. He's really good.
In a hard spot because they can't pay him. They can't pay Debo then. They've already paid Christian McCaffrey, and they just re-upped him. You have Bosa, who's being paid. You have all these other players. You knew that either Debo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk was going to not be a part of their future plans, and I think they've just decided who it's going to be.
Well, let me ask you this then. Where do you see him going? Because there was a report out. I don't see him going to any NFC team. Although the report I saw said he could go to the Cardinals, which is in the same division, so I really don't see that. Because you put him on the same team with Marvin Harrison Jr., that's a very dangerous team.
Kyler Murray's still your quarterback.
I understand that. Or to the Washington football team to pair up with Jaden Daniels. I think there's money issues there that won't allow because they already paid somebody else.
From the Ohio State, McLaughlin.
Thank you. Terry McLaughlin. They already paid him number 1 money. So they're not going to be able to pay both of them like that.
Yep. And you take in that situation the guy from the Ohio State University.
There is no "the" in front of it. Whether you
there 100% is a "the" in front of it.
Only for you idiots who like
there
that
is
team.
a "the" in front of it. Look, the. You see it? I want you to look at the screen.
I don't see it at all.
The Ohio State University.
Ohio State has a good football team.
Yeah. Why do people? It drives me nuts with Ohio State. People are like, "Oh, that's so arrogant." That's the name.
Okay.
If your school was cool, it would have done it too. But Ohio State knew they were going to be
Really?
the best school in the country, and there would be no other school like them.
I don't
And
think
so
that's
they put
why.
the in front of
I
it.
don't think that's why it's there. but-
The Ohio State University.
So the rumors have it the Steelers already called them in February.
Oh man, if he goes to the Steelers,
Well,
that's a dangerous, dangerous team.
it is, but they need the weapons. So it would be a great addition there. The other
Because you already have Pickens there too,
right.
who has been the most underutilized weapon in the NFL.
And the Steelers have ton of cap room. Like $35 million in
But
cap
it has
room.
to be a trade though.
Yes.
And what are you willing to give up? Can you get away with one first-round pick? I mean, if it's one first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk,
then
I'm
you do
making
it.
that trade.
Well, the other teams that are being considered, San Diego, I don't see that happening because that would leave them in California, and San Francisco's not going to do that. The team I think
Why? AFC.
Yeah, AFC. I think the most likely AFC team that they'll go to, because they're not going to do him any favors, they're going to send him to New England, who has a ton of cap room.
That would be
It's
mean.
way on the Northeast. Exactly.
That would be real mean.
You want your money? Here you go.
I mean, it depends what the Chargers offer, though. If the Chargers come in with 2 firsts and a third,
They
I
already
mean,
got
how do you not trade them for a receiver?
they already got rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams.
Listen, Brent, you need more receivers. It makes sense. He's in the AFC. You guys are never going to see each other except maybe once every 4 years. It's not like they're going to face each other in the Super Bowl. I don't see that happening. And Brandon Aiyuk, here's the thing. If you can get 2 firsts for Brandon Aiyuk, I think he's a good player.
Oh, I
He's
take the
not
trade,
Justin Jefferson.
would-
He's not CeeDee Lamb.
especially when he doesn't have Debo and McCaffrey there to give him cover.
Right. I mean, this guy's never had to be a true number 1 receiver. I don't see this happening.
He's going to get traded unless they come to an agreement.
I mean, Arizona would be mean because Kyler Murray's their quarterback.
New England would be
New England would be
meanest-
cruel.
that would be the meanest thing they could do.
Well, he doesn't sign there. Because
Oh.
here's the thing: if they're gonna send capital for him, they're gonna expect him to sign.
They've
But
got
this is what we
40
talked about before. Would you care more about your legacy and care more about going to a good team and winning championships, or do you care more about the money?
Well, this is the exact example of that. New England's got $42 million in cap room. They've got plenty of money to give him.
They do.
And it would be a weapon that they don't have now, and they need a ton of weapons.
And by the way, I do have to correct one thing. You kept saying San Diego, and I did too.
Oh,
It's LA.
LA, sorry.
Chargers.
The Chargers.
The Chargers are still working with cap restrictions. I don't know. I mean, they've done a lot to work on that cap. I don't think they have enough to sign Aiyuk if they trade for him. It would be a season rental. Green Bay, I don't see being an option. We're
Oh.
struggling getting Goody to pay our quarterback.
Well, and
Here's one for you:
go ahead.
the Bears.
No,
Why?
I don't think they're going to trade him to anybody in the NFC. I really don't.
The Vikings? Well, they have Addison.
I don't.
Which, by the way, I'm going to squirrel out here for a second, like I always do.
That's why we have Frenchie there.
Addison from Minnesota just got arrested with DUI, right?
Mm-hmm.
The NFL has a program in place
Yes, they do.
where you just call a phone number and they not only come and get you and take you home at any point, they pick up your car and take
Right.
your car home.
Yep.
Anytime you want.
There is no excuse for anyone in the NFL to ever get a DUI.
Why would you ever even try to drive? It's why I respect Dennis Rodman so much. Dennis Rodman doesn't even have a driver's license because he never drives. He's like, I drink all the time. There's no point in me driving.
Well, I will give you one answer. It's called male ego. I can do this. Don't worry, I got this.
I just don't get it, though.
I don't
mean,
either.
This kid's a rookie on his rookie deal,
And
and you're trying to do this? I mean, but here's the problem, too. It's that first round, like you said, ego. Because you don't catch a 6th and a 7th rounder, an undrafted free agent doing this because they have too much to lose. It's just that idea. I have nothing to lose here. I'm going to do what I want to do. I just don't understand. You're putting yourself at danger. You're putting other people at danger. Look what happened to Henry Ruggs III.
Right.
Especially after that just happened.
It's never going to happen to me. It's the attitude.
Don't get it. I just don't get it. Henry Ruggs III's in jail for I don't even know how many years. I think he's in jail for 10 years. In jail. Prison.
Yeah.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Prison for 10 years for murdering someone with his car, vehicular manslaughter, whatever the hell he was charged with. And as PETA would find it worse, he also got a dog.
As he should be, by the way.
100%. I'm surprised he got that deal. I mean, I'm surprised it wasn't a life sentence, honestly.
You saw the video.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty.
So knowing all this, why in the world would you get behind the wheel of a car and drink, especially as an NFL player, when they intentionally have programs in place where you can get a ride, and if you brought a car, they'll bring your car home?
That's the part of this I don't understand, because there's no excuse for it. The other part of it, I have to admit, I was young. I would drink. And back when I was a kid, the stigma wasn't as much there. There were times, literally, that I got pulled over by a cop in my hometown, and he looked at me knowing I shouldn't be driving and said, "Follow my headlights." And he got me home because he was a great friend of my dad's. That would never happen today.
No, nor should it. It shouldn't happen back then. You're drinking and driving, you get arrested.
Right.
That's such a dumb thing to do.
It's an incredibly stupid thing to do. But when you're young, as they said in Top Gun, your body writes checks, or your ego writes checks your bodies can't cash.
You got a Top Gun line wrong.
Yes. Your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. Sorry.
How dare you?
I know.
Unacceptable.
Please forgive me, people who watch.
That was just a side thing, though, I had to get into. For Brandon Aiyuk, Vikings could be a possibility. The Lions would be a great fit for them.
They would never trade him to the Lions. That's their biggest competitor, theoretically, going into the season.
The Dolphins could be a great fit.
I could see the Dolphins.
I don't know if they have the cap room.
I think it's going to be the Steelers or New England.
Falcons?
They aren't trading him within the NFC. They're not going to have him come back and bite him in the ass.
The Buccaneers?
No.
The Saints?
No. No team that
could. He fits best in NFC teams.
It doesn't matter. He's going to Pittsburgh or he's going to New England is where I think he's going. And I would bet New England.
Is there another AFC team? Baltimore? Kansas City? They're not trading him to Kansas City.
No, again, they're not going to trade him to someplace where he may come back to bite them later.
Baltimore?
No.
Why?
Pittsburgh?
You don't have a quarterback that can win a playoff game.
Or New England.
New England would be cruel.
Yes.
Now, there was another person who was being talked about traded, and who we've talked about being traded for some time now, which is Davante Adams. Now, he did come out. His agent did, I should say, came out and said, this is absolutely ridiculous. Nothing's going to happen. He's staying a Raider. I don't know where this is coming from. And my thought is, really? You don't know where this is coming from? He went from Green Bay, where he's a perennial Super Bowl contender, and he's had 3 quarterbacks in 3 years with the Raiders.
What have I always told you? Any receiver who ever leaves Green Bay regrets it the season after they leave.
Not James Lofton.
No, but Lofton went to the Bills, and Lofton left for other reasons. It wasn't a money grab. He had to leave.
Why?
It involves something that happened in a staircase.
Never mind. Moving on.
Yeah.
He's the only one I would say, though.
Right.
But you're right. Since 1992, when Brett Favre took over as the starter, there has been no receiver that has left Green Bay. But you can make that argument for anybody that leaves a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yes. If you left Tom Brady, you're going to regret it the next year.
Right. Randy Moss was never the same, but his career was almost over anyway, so it didn't really make much of a difference.
No, that was a money grab at the end for Randy. But
the Patriots had to cut him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he caught a ton of touchdowns. What was it?
20.
There you go.
20 touchdowns.
Should have been
Tom Brady threw for 50.
Should have been in Green Bay. Brett Favre begged them to be in Green Bay that year.
That's a whole nother story. Davante Adams, though, there's no surprise where this trade idea is coming from, though. Because, again, he's on his 3rd quarterback in 3 years.
He wants to go back to
I can't imagine he wouldn't want to be traded.
he would want to be traded. I think if he had his druthers, he would come back home.
Yeah,
Green Bay.
break the record in Green Bay.
Which
30 touchdowns away.
yeah, he would get.
He'd already have it.
It's not going to happen.
I think he's stuck with the Raiders. I think he's going to end up. The problem is really, you look at Davante Adams and his age now, he probably has 2, maybe 3 more years left in him of being a top tier receiver. And I love Gardner Minshew, but is he going to be able to continue to feed him the ball to get him the numbers he needs? Because Davante Adams wants to be in the Hall of Fame.
As he should be.
It's really hard for wide receivers to get in the Hall of Fame.
It is. And Gardner Minshew, as good as he is not going to a Brock Purdy, to a CJ Stroud, to even Jordan Love, to a Jared Goff. It's not going to one of those guys where he would get a lot of catches and get to the playoffs.
That's one place, if you really look at Davante Adams towards the end of his career, I could either see him come back to Green Bay to play a role position or go to a Houston to just chase that ring. Because Davante Adams doesn't have a Super Bowl ring.
No, and he would love to have one. There's another player who also doesn't have one that I think is more likely every day that he's going to come back to Green Bay. And that's David Bakhtiari.
No, he's not.
I can see it happening.
No, he's not.
I can see it happening.
You don't want him in Green Bay.
If you have to pay him a league minimum, he's already $19 million against your cap. If he'll come in and he just wants to play.
Yeah, but I don't know how that works, though. I don't think they can re-sign him now that they've released him from the contract.
I think they can.
There's a rule about it goes against. I don't know how that works.
I think they can re-sign him.
He is not coming back.
If I'm the Packers, I would want him back.
There's
as long
egos
as he's
in the
healthy.
way.
I know.
There's egos in the way.
Huda Kosego. He's going to go someplace
Which is
else.
becoming more of a problem, by the way, which we're going to talk about another time in this show. I do want to move on to something else here because I thought this would be a fun topic. You actually came up with this, so I can't take credit for it. But the All Star game is upon us, and you had a great idea.
And the idea was to taking a look at modern baseball, and for modern baseball, we're defining as 1952 today.
Yes.
We're going to pick 2 lists, though. One list is we're going to pick the team we think is the all-time best all-star team from that time period. The second list is going to be made up of our all-time favorite players.
That's the one I'm most excited about.
I know.
I got to make my favorite players. I tried to not make it all Cubs. It was very hard to do. As a kid who grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, a Cubs fan, I could make my all-time favorite Cubs team. I really could. I could have Alfonso Soriano was great until he wasn't. He had a really good first year. Obviously, you have Mark Pryor, you have Kerry Wood, you have Sammy Sosa,
Mark
Grace, which was almost my first base choice, by the way. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I could make a whole Cubs team.
You could, but...
And I meant to say Moises Alou, not Alfonso Soriano. I don't know why I thought Moises Alou and then said Alfonso Soriano.
Isn't Alfonso Soriano the guy who did the dance to Tom Jones on Fresh Prince? No. Maybe not. Sorry. Anyways, let's start. We're going to do it. We're going to pick each
position by position. I did convince him to do DH, so you're welcome.
That's not real baseball, but we're going to do it anyway. So first base. I'll start. I went with Albert Pujols, Jim Thome being right there. But I went with Pujols. My favorite player, though, on my favorite team would be Ernie Banks.
You put him at first?
He played exactly half his career at short and exactly half his career at first. I can make him a first baseman. I remember him as a first baseman.
Yeah, but he's known as a shortstop.
He's a first baseman in my mind.
I think
my favorite player.
Like 5 more games at first.
Yes. Yeah. You got it. And Ernie Banks, I came home after school. This is how I became a Cub fan. Came home after school, was able to turn on a TV station out of Rockford, Illinois or something, and the game was on. And Ernie hit his 500th home run. Jack Brickhouse did his hey, whole 9 yards. I was a Cub fan for life. Loved every minute of that.
Let's play 2.
Yeah, exactly. All right, who do you got?
All right, I did this list because I wanted to be like, okay, this has to be a player that I saw play.
Okay.
Now, and I did that for every position except one.
I did
one
too.
position.
I think I did too, actually.
Well, yeah, you've seen everybody since 1950 play baseball.
Stop it.
If you count this list, it's true.
Okay, go.
I mean, I'm just saying. But I did that for everything except one player because this one player I am such a big fan of and have actually watched a lot of his games from back when he played. And so I broke that rule for one player, and I won't apologize. But best first baseman of all time since 1950, I also have Albert Pujols. I don't think there's any denying that. Over 700 home runs. Huge impactful player, and actually was a really good defensive first baseman.
Yes.
Not the best of all time by any means, but he was good. My favorite first baseman of all time that is on my all-time favorite All-Star team, Anthony Rizzo.
Of course.
It had to be Anthony. Like I said, I tried to not do Cubs here, but how can you not choose Anthony Rizzo is the most entertaining person to watch.
He was. Oh, and I loved
Well,
it.
it still is.
After the World Series, he puts the ball in his pocket, and like, nobody's going to get this.
Right.
All right, who do you have at second?
Second best of all time since 1950, Joe Morgan. I had to go Joe Morgan.
So did I. That's kind of scary, actually.
I had Ryan Sandberg written in there, and then I went back and looked at statistics.
It's Joe Morgan.
I was like, oh, this isn't even really that close.
People forget how good Joe Morgan was in his prime. On the Big Red Machine, he was just awesome.
I mean, offensive statistics, defensive statistics. I mean, Ryan Sandberg's second in all of those statistics.
Joe Morgan's first.
But Joe Morgan's first by a decent amount.
Well,
I even went back and watched. I've seen a lot of Ryan Sandberg games, so I actually went back and watched before we did this show some Joe Morgan highlights. And I'm like, oh my God.
You wanted him up to hit when the game was on the line.
Well, and if you wanted if the game was on the line, you were hoping a ground ball was getting hit to Joe Morgan. He was outstanding. He is by far the best.
He played with the smallest glove of any modern major leaguer.
I didn't know that part.
It was just a tiny glove, and he was that good because he wanted so he could turn the double play easier.
Yeah, that's fair. My favorite player to watch at second base, it was Chase Utley. I loved watching him when he was a younger player for the Phillies. I love watching him with the Dodgers when he was with the Dodgers. I'm a big Chase Utley fan. I had to choose him.
Well, mine is, by no surprise, considering your brother was supposed to be named after him, is Ryan Sandberg. Obviously, I watched him.
I didn't see him play.
I did. And I will never, ever forget the Ryan Sandberg game where he got 2 home runs off of Bruce Sutter. He won that game. It was awesome. Okay, shortstop. I don't think this is much of an argument, but I know it's going to be for a lot of people. Ozzie Smith is the greatest defensive shortstop in the history of the game. Had a good enough bat.
I'll fight you on it.
Fine, go ahead. Had a good enough bat. I picked Ozzie because I've never seen anybody play defense the way he did.
Sure. The answer is Alex Rodriguez. We've had this conversation.
He's used. He's never going to make my list.
What does it have to do with defensive ability?
He's not making my list because he juiced. That's
still Alex Rodriguez.
Fine, but you can put him on your list. I don't put cheaters on my list. Who do you have for your favorite?
Alex Rodriguez.
Okay. I was hoping you didn't say somebody stupid like Derek Jeter because Alex Rodriguez was a better shortstop than he was.
You yell at me for taking shots at Kurt Warner all the time. You do the same thing for Jeter.
Yes, because
so I don't want to hear a damn thing about me with my Kurt Warner remarks. When any baseball conversation we have, you take a shot at Derek Jeter.
Yeah, because he's never going to come on the show. Kurt Warner might come on someday.
No, he won't.
Robin Yount is of course, my favorite shortstop of all the time. Fair. He's still the only guy to ever win an MVP at 2 separate positions.
Yeah, you got to pick him for one. Didn't he play center field more than shortstop?
He may have ended up playing more. He came up when he was 18 in like 1974 and played through 83, I think, before he got injured at shortstop. He was much better later in his years when he filled out.
Yeah.
But he's my shortstop. Still the best big shortstop. And I would take Robin Yount over Cal Ripken Jr. And I know a lot of people are going to have Ripken Jr. as their shortstop.
Robin Yount played the position very differently because of how tall he was.
Correct.
He, at that time, I think, was the tallest shortstop to ever play that position.
And he also had most of his power to right center. He was a right-handed hitter, and he wasn't a big pull hitter. He got a ton
Got
of
around
home runs.
quick.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, that was the big thing. He got around real quick on the ball. I never saw Robin Yount play shortstop. Obviously, I've seen highlights and things like that, but I had to go with the greatest shortstop of all time, somebody I watched play shortstop, and it's Alex Rodriguez.
Cheaters can't be on lists.
It's Alex Rodriguez.
Cheaters can't be on lists, which explains mine. Third base.
Jesus.
Third base. The greatest third baseman of all time
Mike
is on Mike Schmidt.
It's Mike Schmidt for me, too.
And favorite of all time, do we need to say it at the same time?
Ron
Ron
Santo.
Santo.
He's my excuse. It is Ron Santo. I am such a huge Ron Santo fan.
342 home runs to Brooks Robinson, who was not the best third baseman of the 60s. It was Ron Santo. Robinson only had 268 home runs.
Yeah, but if you're a shortstop, especially back at that time, third baseman, I'm sorry. What am I trying to say? They weren't really known for pop. I mean, it was really outfielders that were known for pop.
First and third base was supposed to be your power position.
If you look at statistically, it didn't turn out that way.
I know.
I get people didn't hit as much home runs, and I'm biased because of the era I've lived in with baseball.
Okay.
Your outfielders had the more home runs.
They did. And Eddie
than
Matthews.
the first and third.
I thought about Eddie Matthews as well, obviously.
Third, especially if you go back to, and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure.
but if you go back to third base, back especially in the 60s, it was more of a defensive position than it was a power hitting position if you look back at stats.
When you had guys in the 60s like Eddie Matthews.
Eddie Matthews didn't play in the 60s.
He did too play in the 60s.
Played in the 50s.
60s. He played in the 50s and 60s. He had 500 and some home runs.
Okay, two players.
Ron Santo, 368.
Two players.
Uh-huh.
Ron Santo is my favorite. I'm a huge
I love Ron Santo.
fan.
Plus, he went to the hospital in the offseason to get a leg cut off because he had very bad diabetes. That's what killed him. But he had it cut off in the offseason so he wouldn't miss any games as a broadcaster. He was a great broadcaster.
Thank you for saying as a broadcaster.
He was a great broadcaster.
He didn't get his leg cut off while he was playing.
No.
Yeah, he ended up losing both of his legs and ended up he couldn't actually broadcast towards the end of his life because you look at the old Washington Stadium where they played in RFK before they got the new stadium built. It didn't have elevators.
Right. And the one thing that I loved about Ron Santo, when he was playing, he couldn't tell anybody he had diabetes.
No, he couldn't.
Because he always said,
one person knew.
His roommate knew.
Yep.
And so if he ever would have went into an insulin coma or a diabetes attack, his roommate knew to run up and put a candy bar in his mouth.
He did. It is Ron Santo. He is my all-time favorite third baseman.
Moving to the outfield.
Yes, you cheated on this one. So I cheated on this one. So just so you know, he just said outfielders. I took this as when I first made this list as we need to have a left fielder, a center fielder, and a right fielder. Then I saw his list, and that's not how he did.
I actually ended up with that.
Well, then I cheated.
Yeah.
Because I definitely changed my list after I saw that. All right, go. Who's your top three?
All right. I had Frank Robinson, who is an unbelievable. He's the only guy to ever win an MVP in both leagues back in the day, which nobody did. Unbelievable player, but for my outfield, I went with Ted Williams.
Yep.
Willie Mays.
Yep.
And Henry Aaron. I don't think you can go wrong with those three.
I have Ted Williams, which you changed it because I had Ted Williams. Because this is 50s to today. And so, yes, Ted Williams started his career in 1939, but he played in the 50s and was still great in the 50s. So Ted Williams.
Besides being a war hero.
Yes. Willie Mays is also on my list. And Mickey Mantle is my other outfielder.
I can't argue with Mickey Mantle. Probably, not probably. He is the greatest switch hitting hitter of all time.
Yeah, it's not even close. Speaking of being a drunk.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was one of those guys that knew how to play drunk.
Yes, he did. All right, who is your favorite outfielders on your favorite All-Star team?
Billy Williams, Chicago Cubs.
Yep.
Unbelievable player. How many did he have? 426 home runs. Hank Aaron.
Okay.
My favorite player, my hero growing up. And just because he was going to do one of three things. He was either going to strike out, run into a wall, or hit a home run. Corman Thomas is my center fielder.
That's fair. All right. You're going to laugh at one of these. Ichiro Suzuki. is my number one.
Okay.
Ken Griffey Jr. And then this is a guy, I get it. He's not the best of all time. He's a borderline Hall of Famer and might never get in, but he was so fun to watch. Jim Edmonds.
Oh, he was great. I mean,
I loved watching Jim Edmonds play. He was one of my favorite players to watch.
Some of the catches he made,
yeah,
were just mind-boggling.
When he came to the Cubs for a short amount of time, I was so excited.
Yeah.
Like, because you just never knew the amazing plays you were going to see. I loved watching Jim Edmonds play.
And I almost put Ken Griffey on my all-time list ahead of Willie Mays, but in the end, I couldn't do it.
You could have. The problem is he got hurt.
He did. By running into a wall.
Yeah.
By the way.
Making one of the greatest catches of all time.
Yeah. All right. Catchers.
Greatest of all time, Johnny Bench. I'm guessing that's also your favorite player.
You think?
Yeah. Pudge Rodriguez for me.
Yeah. I can see that.
I could argue is the greatest catcher of all time.
You could argue you'd lose, but and the person that we're missing that I wish we could include is Josh Gibson. Got in an argument with a guy, and I haven't talked to you about this yet, but he was going, Josh Gibson never faced the talent that you would have in the major league.
Oh, that's not true.
And I said, the major leagues never faced the talent they would have if the Negro League players would have been allowed to play. Josh Gibson played against the best of the best, including guys like Satchel Paige.
That's what would have made Major League Baseball so great if it had integrated sooner.
Oh.
Because you had probably 50% of the Negro Leagues that would have been in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
And then you would have had the top 50% of Major League Baseball that still would be there. And now you just have talent.
In other words, they should have done what Ty Cobb said in about 1911.
Yeah, Ty Cobb was calling for integration
Well
before it was ever even talked about. I agree with you there. Josh Gibson didn't play. He played before 1950.
Yeah, he did. So I can't include him, but I want to give him a shout out because he may be the best catcher of all time.
Josh Gibson was on my list as the best catcher of all time, and then I realized the rules.
Well, Johnny Bench, I still say is the best catcher, but it would be
because you're
1 and 1A.
Because you're biased. All right, so we have designated hitter. Who is your all-time great designated?
There's only one, Edgar Martinez.
I said David Ortiz.
Did you really?
Yes, because if you're looking for a designated hitter, what do I need my designated hitter to do? I need my designator to hit the best in clutch playoff situations. And David Ortiz, if you had 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, down by 1, 2 men on, David Ortiz is the person you want at the plate for that situation.
And I would want Edgar Martinez because I know he's going to get a hit.
But Edgar Martinez was never in that situation.
No, he wasn't.
Seattle was a really bad team at that time. And that's where I looked at it. It's like, okay, this isn't fair to Edgar Martinez because he really wasn't in this situation. But David Ortiz was in the biggest moments in baseball history, some of those. And he stepped up to the plate and was amazing.
People don't realize how hard being a DH is because you only get up once every 4 times in a game, maybe.
You got to stay warm.
Yeah. And Martinez was unbelievable at it.
He was great.
So was Poppy. Who do you have as your favorite?
Kyle Schwarber.
Of course you do.
I mean, how could I have another answer? I get it. I'm a Cubs fan. This is my favorite list, okay? I've been good so far, but my favorite of all time is Kyle Schwarber.
And mine is the igniter, Paul Molitor, because he turned out to be an incredible DH.
I'll give it to you.
Get on base. He was fantastic.
It's your favorite list?
Yeah.
All right, right-handed pitcher. This was tough for me.
Wasn't for me. They changed the mound height because of him. Bob Gibson.
Oh, I forgot about
Bob Gibson. They had to change the height and lower it because Bob Gibson was dominating. He had like a 1.19 ERA.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is Bob Gibson.
Yeah.
It is. I chose Greg Maddux.
You can't go wrong.
As the all-time great. Again, I went with players that I saw play.
And I've got Greg Maddux as my favorite.
I thought about putting Greg Maddux as my favorite, but
it's Kerry Wood.
Wood.
I know who's on your list.
I mean, that is my favorite all-time player is Kerry Wood. So my answer, of course, is Kerry Wood. And but again, you could have went. I honestly, it's Bob Gibson is the greatest right-handed pitcher since the 1950s.
I mean,
I can't have Greg Maddux on there.
Greg Maddux is an artiste. But Kerry Wood, for those who don't know, it was the first game he really ever sat and watched the full game.
It was the first game I watched.
The 20 strikeout game.
And I've been a fan of Kerry Wood ever since. Kerry Wood is the reason I enjoy baseball. Yeah. So it's Kerry Wood for me. He's my favorite all-time player.
Who do you have for your left-handed starter?
Randy Johnson.
Okay.
All-time is Randy Johnson.
I've got Warren Spahn, 363 wins.
Did he play after 19? Yeah, of course he did. He was on the 57 World Series. Yeah. What am I thinking?
Yeah, so he's my left-handed pitcher. Randy Johnson is my favorite because he killed a bird.
Jeez.
It's just my favorite moment.
He was also one of the greatest pitchers of all time.
He was.
Left or right-handed.
4,800 plus strikeouts. He was amazing. But killing that bird is just going to go down in history. In 1,000 years, nobody's going to remember they have 4,800 strikeouts. They'll remember he killed a bird.
Yeah, probably. But Randy Johnson is also my choice, my favorite all-star left-hander. Lastly, it is reliever.
I hate to do this, but I've got to go because he was the most dominant one-inning pitcher ever, Mariano Rivera. Yeah. Who's your favorite? You got him as your favorite as well?
He's also my favorite.
Okay. Yes. Mine, of course, is not because of what he did with the Brewers, but because
hold on. Let me guess.
It's Raleigh Fingers. You know that.
Fingers.
It's what he did with Oakland. They won.
Sure, it is.
It was. They won 3 in a row. I love that team. I also love the Big Red Machine. So I just love baseball. But yes,
Raleigh Fingers. I knew the answer to that. If we would have had one pitcher on this list, you would have chosen Raleigh Fingers.
No, I wouldn't.
I do have an issue, by the way, and I know we're going to get into this more next week, but ESPN right now is listing out their top 100 athletes of the 21st century.
This is somebody with a recency bias.
This isn't a recency bias. This is just stupid.
Whoever's making this list is 22 years old and still lives in his mother's house.
The title is athletes.
Uh-huh.
And they have Mariano Rivera at like 59 or something like that, and have Aaron Rodgers at 91. They have Charles Woodson, Ed Reed, 99 and 100 behind Mariano Rivera. They have Manny Pacquiao behind Mariano Rivera.
Well, and you know what they're getting out of it? Exactly this. We're talking about it.
Yeah, I know we're going to...
We will.
We said we were going to talk about it next week because we wanted to see the whole 100 list, but this list is already bullshit. I mean, this is athletes is the title. Athletes.
Look, I can tell you now, Tom Brady will be number one on the list.
They have Annika Sorostan behind Mariano Rivera.
It's a dumb list. Tom Brady will be their number one.
No, it won't be LeBron James.
Oh,
which fair.
Okay, he's an athlete. I still think it might be Tom Brady, and Tom Brady has acknowledged himself. He's not the most athletic of players.
I don't get how pitchers are really even on the list, but that's a story we will save for next week. You and I have had a great show, however, and as you all know, you cannot have a conversation with your dad without your father getting the last word, so it is all you.
All right, we don't talk politics on this show for obvious reasons, but something happened over the weekend that hasn't happened since 1981. A president or former president had an assassination attempt on it and was within millimeters of taking a former president's life. This kind of thing has to stop. It's ridiculous. We live in a country that is divided, granted, but this isn't about party. No president from the other side of the aisle should ever face assassination. It happened with JFK. It should never happen again. I learned when I was very young that sometimes your side wins, sometimes your side loses. When you win, you still have to remember that you have to govern everybody who voted against you. And if you lose, you have to become something that we never hear about anymore, and that's the loyal opposition. When you're the loyal opposition, doesn't mean you give up on your morals and your beliefs. It means that you have to try to work hard to work with the governing party, those that won, but at the same time, try to change their minds so that some of your ideas can still get passed. When all is said and done, it's not the letter that's behind your name. It's the fact that we're all still Americans, win or lose. In sports, you can say you hate somebody, Packer fans can say they hate the Minnesota Vikings. But I tell you what, if the Minnesota fans of the Vikings ever were hurt, attacked, or hurt by a natural disaster, the people in Wisconsin would be the first ones to stand up to try to help. That's what neighbors do, and that's really what Americans are. We're all neighbors in the same country. So think about this. Let's end all this craziness going on. Remember, we're all Americans. We're all going to be rooting for the same side in the Olympics coming up in a couple weeks. And let's stop all the hatred that's going on just because of what party somebody might support.
High five. Good one. Thank you, as always, so much for watching. This has been Sports Talk with Dad. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.